Couple of things. One is have a reason for your number. The multiplier effect is wonderful. If you can find a low number and multiply it times the number, another number, that's excellent. Per diem arguments are excellent. Let me take the remaining time. They've asked me to do a particular closing argument, or a small portion of it. One of Aristotle's principles of persuasion was to execute the required level of emotion. It's harder today to execute the required level of emotion because if you're not careful, the jury will think that we are simply manipulating them. So I've been asked to do a particular argument that blends executing the required level of emotion, ties it into, and hopefully moves seamlessly into a plea for punitive damages. And I'll just tell you, this is posted on my website. It's howardnations.com/publications. You go to the publications page. It's a Matthew Bender. There's a Matthew Bender analysis of this from their Summations book, and there's a tape under $1 Million Arguments. So if you don't have time to take notes or whatever, because I'm going to be moving through this pretty rapidly. But remember, you must have permission for an emotional argument. The goal of an emotional argument is to touch the life experiences of jurors so that they identify with the plaintiff. You're looking for commonality because they're going to make their decisions based upon life experience anyway. Listen to the metaphors, the rhetorical questions, the repetition of the theme, and the linking the emotion to the plea for punishment. Okay, this is just a small portion of an argument in the time remaining to me. It was the death of a child as a result of a product, and it was a defective product. We've already done a 40-minute closing argument. This is the responsive. This is the closing part of the closing argument in which I talk about the damages. I used to do this one from memory, but I like to say it's been a long time, but my memory is just fading rapidly. May it please the court, counsel, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. Now we talk of money. We talk of money because there is no magic. Is anyone so callous as to believe that if you as a jury had the power to bring young David Taylor through that courtroom door and bring him back down into the arms of his parents, that there would be talk of money? No. You would see only exultant joy as you watch these young parents emerge from the depths of despair into the heights of happiness. And you see that young family leave this courtroom as the happiest family on the face of the earth. But there is no money. There is no magic. There's only despair. There's no magic. There's only reality. There's no magic. So we talk of money. You know, magic exists only in the world of children, such as young David Taylor. The magic of each new day in David's life, his new challenges, his dreams, his fantasies. The magic of testing his God-given talents against those of his friends, particularly his young cousins. Hitting the ball as far, running as fast. The magic of his toys, his games, his Alaskan Husky snowball. The magic of every day, but especially birthdays and Christmas. Although there were only 7, and there will be no more. But what is this loss that you're called upon to measure? As I was thinking last night about what I could possibly say to help you measure the unbelievable loss that's being experienced by Karen and David, I was reminded of the prose that my mother had on her bedroom wall when I was a child. It was called, "What is a Boy?" I'd like to share a portion of that with you now. Between the innocence of babyhood and the dignity of manhood, we find the delightful creature called a boy. Boys come in assorted sizes, but all boys have the same creed: to enjoy every second of every minute of every hour of every day, and to protest with the noise, their only weapon, when the last minute is finished and mom and dad pack them off to bed at night. Boys are found everywhere: on top of, underneath, inside of, climbing on, emerging from, running around, jumping to. Mothers love them. Little girls hate them. Brothers and sisters tolerate them. And usually, heaven can protect them. A boy's a magical creature. You can lock him out of your workshop, but you can't lock him out of your heart. You can get him out of your study, but you can't get him out of your mind. You might as well give up. He's your captor, your jailer, your boss. A freckle-faced, pint-sized, cat-chasing bundle of noise. But when you come home at night with only the shattered pieces of your hopes and dreams, he can mend them all with those two magic words: "Hi, Dad." But David Sr. will never again hear those magic words, because the magic of young David's life ended on that fateful November day and was replaced by stark reality when an inevitable time bomb, which this defendant created and refused to recall, exploded and took with it the life of this young child and the hopes and dreams and aspirations of this young family. So that since there is no magic in our justice system, we speak of money. But we speak of money now because this defendant spoke of money 5 years ago in their corporate boardroom when they refused to recall this product. Why? Because a recall would have cost this corporation $4 million. So they refused to recall, and the inevitable tragedy occurred. Ladies and gentlemen, is that the standard of care and standard of safety that we will tolerate for our children in this great country? Or is it reprehensible corporate conduct which must not be allowed to occur again? That is your decision. That and the value to be placed on this young child's life. Now, the defendant warned you against sympathy for this family. We agree wholeheartedly. Don't look at this family with sympathy. Sympathy is like charity. It's demeaning. Believe me, they received sympathy at the funeral every time they looked into the faces of their friends and family. They received sympathy when they returned to the jobs and looked into the eyes of their coworkers. They received sympathy when they returned to their church services and looked into the eyes of their fellow parishioners. They've had enough sympathy to last 10 lifetimes. We're not here about sympathy. We're here about correcting a grave injustice. So in evaluating the damages in this case, don't look at the death of this young man. Look instead at the life that never will be. Since there is no magic, examine closely reality. The reality of the loss of David's society, participating with his parents in various phases of their lives. The reality of the loss of his companionship, and the reality of experienced mental anguish every day of their lives. The reality by which you should measure the amount of money to be awarded in this case is that these young parents will never again share the daily joys, fears, hopes, and tears of David, this gift of God to this fine couple. Reality is that David lived only 7 years, 10% of his life expectancy. His life was like a mere preview of coming attractions. Reality is that these parents awaken every day of their lives to the realization that David is gone forever. Reality is that watching their friends, his friends and their young nephews is a constant source of devastating mental anguish to this couple, as each night they think of that young life that never will be. The reality is they'll never know if David would have followed in his father's footsteps. High school merit scholar, college athlete, academic scholar, med school. Would he have followed in his grandfather's footsteps as a professional military man? Or would he have carved his own unique niche in life? We'll never know. But we do know that David's opportunity to live his own life is gone forever. In addition to David's loss, the reality of the parents' loss is that they'll never know those special moments that reward parents so beautifully. Karen will never again hear the 4 most beautiful words in the world. I love you, Mommy. They'll never share the competition of that first Little League game, the nervousness of the first date, the elation of high school graduation, or the maturing effect of college as they watch their young man grow up. They'll never experience that magic moment when young David walks in and says, "Hi, Mom. Hi, Dad. This is the girl I'm going to marry." David Sr. will never know that magic thrill of that moment when he picks up the phone and hears the most magical words of all. "Congratulations, Grandpa. It's a boy." The days of greatest joy for families, a family celebration in America. Mother's Day, Father's Day, birthdays, Thanksgiving, Christmas are now days of mourning in the Taylor household. These are only a few of the endless litany of losses thrust upon these parents by the gamble of the corporate defendant. What is this child's life worth in our community? That determination is your role in the justice system, to write the final chapter of the book of this child's life. But ladies and gentlemen, before we close the books on young David Taylor's life, examine carefully another set of books in this case. Because as we speak here today, the life of young David Taylor is carried as a $4 million profit item on the books of this corporation. This corporation made the willful decision to gamble. It gambled the $4 million profit against the safety of the public. It gambled the $4 million profit on the judicial system of this great state. And it gambled the $4 million profit against the life of young David Taylor. We know that young David lost their treacherous gamble. The question is, did this defendant corporation that made this gamble win? That's your decision, Ms. Andrew. We say that if public safety is to be served and justice rendered, the corporation must not be allowed to win this horrendous gamble. That's why you're here. With your verdict, you have the opportunity and the responsibility to serve as the conscience of the community. First, to tell the Taylors that their family and their son, what they mean to this community, and the value that this community places on young David's life. And secondly, to tell this corporation if their gamble with the safety of this young child paid off. If your verdict is large enough, your voices will be heard in the entire industry with the message that we value human life infinitely more than we value the value of the profits of corporations. If your verdict is large enough, it will shine like a beacon in the sea of the treacherous seas of product liability and manufacturers' accountability as we send the message that profit over safety will not be tolerated by the citizens who make up the juries of this country. So what is this child's life worth in our community? Is $4 million nearly enough? Council says $4 million is too much money. How much is $4 million in our society today? Ladies and gentlemen, we live in a society in which paint on canvas recently sold for $78 million. Why? Because it was the work of a master, Van Gogh. If paint on canvas is worth $78 million in our society because it's the work of a master, how can we even begin to make an award to compensate for the loss of the greatest creation of the greatest master of them all, God's creation of the human child? Is the life of David Taylor worth at least the $4 million we're seeking? The answer is that his life was priceless. We can't replace him. So we must talk of money. But again, when we talk of money, remember who talked of money first. Money was inserted into this scenario because the corporate board placed profits ahead of safety. So if you will use wisely your power, you can now serve as the conscience of the community and send the message that needs to be sent. How can you best serve your fellow citizens, get the attention of the board of directors, and render a full measure of justice to this fine family? First, by returning a verdict in the amount of $4 million in compensatory damages, and secondly, by an award of exemplary damages or punitive damages. Now, we have a simple method in this great state for what constitutes a fair, reasonable, exemplary damages award in a case like this. It's called treble damages. In this case, in addition to the $4 million in compensatory damage, the message that must go forth from this jury, which will be heard resoundingly in the boardroom, is conveyed by an exemplary damage award of $12 million. Corporations are motivated by profits. They operate on numbers. And if on a $4 million gamble, they lose $12 million additional dollars, then you're conversing fluently in the language of corporations. And that turns their profit-motivating minds to the production of safer products. Of our examination, we told you that evidence would support $16 million. You know now what we knew then, that full justice demands both punishment and that an example be made of this defendant for the entire industry. You know now what we knew then, that the devastation visited upon this fine young couple cannot be compensated and justice fully served by less than $4 million in compensatory and $12 million in punitive damages. Ladies and gentlemen, I've carried the mantle of responsibility for this lawsuit on my shoulders for 4 years. And I'm now going to lift that mantle of responsibility and place it trustingly in your hands. And all we ask is that when you go home to your family and they say, "What did you do in court?" you can look them straight in the eye and say, "We helped make this country a safer place to live. We showed a family that their son was a very, very valuable member of this community, and we rendered full and complete justice." Thank you very much.